In today's video, we're going to be making these clay pins and magnets. If you've ever been curious about how to make these, I hope you can learn something from this video. The first thing we gotta do is, of course, design. I usually do initial sketches on paper and then draw over them in Clip Studio Paint, as you see me doing here. This is where I refine the design so I can get a clear picture of how the finished pins or magnets will look. I also like to figure out all the colors I'll be using for each design on the computer too. That way when I'm painting them, it's super easy to know which colors go where. Once all of the design work is done, I arrange them to fit on an 8.5 by 11 sheet of cardstock and print them out. That way I can cut them out with scissors to use as stencils basically, so I can cut out the exact shapes I need with the clay instead of trying to form them all by hand. This takes a little bit of time, so throw on a video or movie to watch. I'm watching some of Megan Wang's studio vlogs here, and once everything is cut out, we can move right along to the next step. This is what I have so far. I've just went ahead and cut out all of the kind of like stencil shapes for all of my clay pins. And actually, when I was done with that, I added 2 more with just some scrap paper I left over. Made a little skull and a little ghosty. I think I have like 23 or something now. So we're actually on to the next step, which is going to be sculpting them with some Sculpey. And yeah, so let's just get into that. I like to use this little cutting mat just to do all of the clay work on. It's easier to clean up, and I can just put it away when I'm done instead of getting my desk super dirty. The other thing I like to do is use some parchment paper and a little firm tray. This is the tray that I use to bake on pretty much. I'm just going to cut a little sheet to size for here, and then the excess I'll just keep onto the side to put them on as I'm done working with them. Now it fits in there pretty perfectly. I have 3 of these little cat designs. They're all the same overall base shape, but just different markings on them. But I like to see them all together, so when I'm actually painting them, it's just kind of easier to paint if I can see it, you know, right in front of me side by side to the actual clay piece to make sure I'm doing it how I wanted to do it, you know? So I think there's some pumpkins that are repeated too, and as I'm making them I might make, you know, multiple skulls or multiple ghosts or something. So now we just have to roll out the clay to a little bit less than 1/4 inch, and then we can start cutting them out and sculpting them. So I like to just start with a little piece at a time, and you just kind of want to warm it up in your hands. Make sure your hands are freshly washed, and some people even use like a small scrap piece of clay like this and just clean their hands of any dust, but hands are pretty clean. And so yeah, just a little bit at a time, and then we can start rolling it out pretty easily after that. So something that I wanted to do actually the last time I made clay pins was, as I'm rolling them out, I'd like it to be a consistent, you know, just less than 1/4 inch thick. And I've seen some people use popsicle sticks to kind of make a little track that this can sit on to keep the same thickness. But I have these, so I'm thinking maybe I can just like tie them together and maybe they'll be a good enough height. I'm not sure. So I'm gonna test it out and see if it works. Alright, so I have this little, there's 3 of them together. It's just a little bit too thick, but I think if I use it as a base and then take this away and go over it like one time, it'll be pretty much how I want it. Alright, so now I have 2 pretty sturdy little, like, I don't know what you would call this, just something for the side. So now this, when I put it on, it should be able to glide over it and keep it a single height. Alright, so now I actually just taped them down so they won't move, so I can focus on just rolling it. So let's see how it works. Alright, that's as thin as it's going to get utilizing these side things. Yeah, I think I'd like it a little bit thinner. Not too much though, so I think I'm going to take it off to the side here and just kind of roll it out a little bit. One thing I learned the last time I made clay pins too was after you roll it out, it like really sticks to your surface. So if you immediately go and, you know, cut out your pin and try and peel it off, it almost peels away in clumps because it's sticking so much to the surface. So after you're done rolling it out, lift it up gently so it's not attached anymore, and then go ahead and cut out your shape so you have a much easier time, you know, picking it off after you cut it out. I'm gonna get some of my tools. I'm going to start easy and just cut out a couple of these circle ones. So I'm just using this little kind of blade tool just to cut it out. I've also seen people use an X-Acto knife. Just use kind of whatever you can get your hands on. And you're just going to cut around it. And then when you're done, because you removed it prior, it peels off really nice. There's no chunks missing or anything. And you can see the edges obviously need to be cleaned up, and we'll do that once we get all the major, like all the shapes cut out. So I'll just put it off to the side here and move on to the next one. And just kind of keep doing this till you have all of your stuff, all your little designs cut out. Another thing that I like to do is, instead of immediately after cutting it out, going in and trying to clean it up and smooth out the edges, I actually like to, you know, put them aside, let them cool down, and they kind of firm up, and it's easier just to smooth out those edges without distorting the overall shape too much. Alright, so we finished that first little batch of rolled out clay. So I'm just going to go ahead and do that again and continue cutting all these out, and I'll probably talk to you after I finish that. Okay, so I finished cutting out all of the shapes. I have them on a tray and some over here. And I'm just going to put up the rest of this extra clay that I didn't end up using. And so then I have all of these little stencils, which I will keep because, you know, who knows, I might end up making more in the future or for next Halloween. So I'll end up putting these into their own little bag and store them away for next time as well. Here's all of our little pieces, our little pins to be. And now kind of the least favorite part, in my opinion, is actually going through and kind of fine-tuning their shapes and making them all nice and smooth, get rid of any harsh edges, or, you know, just make them look how they're supposed to be. So I ended up making 3 extra skulls and 2 ghosts. I thought, you know, having a few extra skulls and ghosts would be a good thing to have, so they've kind of firmed up, so I'm just gonna go through and kind of pick a tool, which I usually like to use. Like, this has like round edges, and just kind of, you know, just make it smooth. I use my fingers sometimes too, just to smooth out the edges. Let me see. Yeah, so you can see like these little pieces that need to be fixed, this little wonky edge, this little divot here, so all of that will just be cleaned up. And here's actually a time you can decide, do you want kind of these squared off edges like I have? Or some people even kind of with their finger go through and round out all the edges, so that's kind of something you can decide here at this stage as well. Me personally, again, I like to keep them kind of squared off and just more of a pointy edge. Alright, and this one's done too. And I think that's all I'm gonna do for today. I'll save the baking and hopefully painting tomorrow. So just to let you guys know, it took me like 2.5 hours to cut them out, both with the paper and with the Sculpey, and then kind of, like I said, like smooth them out. It took about 2.5 hours, just to give you kind of like a heads up about how long it took me. I don't know if that's fast or slow or not. I feel like it's pretty slow, but it might be because I am a bit of a perfectionist, so yeah, if you're not, maybe it'll take you less time. I think that's where I'll stop for today. I'm just gonna put these away safely away from all my cats, and then I'll see you guys tomorrow. Alright, it's the next day, and one more thing I forgot to do before I bake them is I just use some alcohol and wipe the surface off, which smooths out any fingerprints, and it also can help you get rid of any dust. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that now, and then we'll put them in the oven and they'll be ready to paint. And I'm gonna do any last minute alterations to like the surface or edges, just to make sure they're pretty good. You don't need much alcohol in there. And I ran out of all my good brushes, so this one, we'll see how it works. I wanted more of a flat tip, but all I have is this round one for now. And you just go and wipe the surface, use your finger to pick off any dust it lifts up. So that one's good to go. And we'll just keep moving on down the line. Alright, the oven is preheated. I made myself a little protein strawberry banana smoothie while I waited. Say hello to Gravier. Make sure they're all evenly spaced for the most part, and that they're laying flat because you will not be able to change them after they bake. But yeah, let's go ahead and put them in the oven. Kenobi. Hey, you guys gotta move. And off they go. It's kind of in the middle of the oven too, not too high, not too low. And we're gonna put the timer on for about 13 minutes. So I have all the clay pins out of the oven now, and something I've noticed is sometimes there's little like bubbles on the clay. You can kind of see it. You see these little like bubbles here. Sometimes they might be worse than others. All I'm using is some acetone. Same stuff I use when I paint my nails with gel polish to remove them. All I'm gonna do is take a Q-tip and the acetone, and you're just gonna kind of rub on the surface gently. I'm not putting like pressure at all, honestly. I'm just letting it skate across the surface. And if you kind of go over the entire piece, it will at least lessen the appearance of the bubble, and sometimes it'll even take it completely away. If you press too hard, you might actually create a little hole as it kind of eats away that bubble. And it already looks a lot less. Let me take another one that might have some. Like here, this one, see that? This one majorly is pretty bad. I'm not worried too much about it because I do paint over these, and after the coat of resin, it like really hides the appearance of bubbles, and you really don't even see it at that point. But this is more so just try and get rid of them if I can. And already that's looking a lot better. This one in particular is shrunk down quite a bit. It's always worth giving it a try. And then after that, I'll go through and do a light sanding as well. Hello, it's the next day, so now we're going to be doing all of the painting of the clay pins. So I have to get set up here with all of my paints, paint brushes, some water, and I'm using acrylic paint, so we're going to go ahead and get started. to put on my little apron. Anytime I do any sort of painting, I like to put on an apron just to kind of protect my clothes a little bit more. There we go. Just to quickly show you on one of my monitors here, I have the color palettes of all of the clay pens that I want to paint. And I know it's not going to be perfect, I don't have like super bright colors, but it's going to still look really cool, I think. So this is kind of the setup I'm working with. Paints over here, 2 water jars. I have one for like dirty rinsing and then one for like a clean if I need some fresh water to mix with the paint or something. Clay pens over here. I actually got a little palette knife out just to mix my paints, and I'm going to be using these little styrofoam plates just to mix my paint on. And I'm also going to do little swatches here of the colors, and just to kind of make sure I'm happy with the color before I actually start painting the clay pens. So sometimes when I'm mixing and I'm really not sure how to get a certain color, like this really light kind of minty green, I'll basically just try and mix it in a really small amount, and then I'll try and mix it in the larger amount so I don't waste so much paint typically. So I know this one took just a little bit of yellow and just the smallest amount of blue, and as I'm mixing this it's a little bit too light, which is no problem. I'd rather be too light than too dark. So I'm gonna add a little bit more yellow again, and then just a little bit of blue. So now I have the kind of green color. Alright, so this one is going to be the little eyeball, which is dark purple actually. I'm going to start by just painting the backs. Let them dry for a minute or two and then paint the front. And I'll definitely be doing like 2 coats. Some colors might even take 3 to get that desired color that I want. So the next thing we're gonna do is actually put the pin backings, little metal pieces, on some of these pins here, and I'm gonna save some of them for magnets. So I'll just, after I resin them, I'll actually put the magnets on. But I am gonna go through and sort out which ones I want to use as pins and which ones I want to use as magnets. And then to attach the clay pins and magnets, I'm going to use this super glue. It is odorless, so if you're affected by, you know, strong smelling things, this one's good to get. Alright, so I think I've narrowed it down. So this kind of row up here will be pins, and this little group down here will all be magnets. So these I'm going to actually put away for right now because I have to resin them before I put the magnets on. And then these ones, I'll show you how I put the pin backings on with the glue. Alright, so before you start opening up the super glue and using it or whatever, please put on gloves. I just use some nitrile gloves just to make sure if I do get any glue on my hands, it doesn't stick to my skin. Alright, so we just have to let this sit for about 3 hours before doing anything with it. So what I'll probably do is just put the pin backings on, and then tomorrow I'll go ahead and do all the resin, and then maybe the next day I'll put the magnets on. So I definitely like to spread this out, the workload, over several days. Get our pin ready and try and figure out before you even add any glue how many pins you'll need per clay thing. So sometimes, like for example, if I was doing this one as a clay pin, it's kind of long, so I would probably do 2, kind of space them out. That way when you put it on, it won't start spinning on the person or bag that it's on, so it kind of holds it in that position however they want to put it on. So yeah, this one's going to be a magnet, so we don't need to do that. All of these should just have 1 this time because they're not kind of odd shapes. So I'll just plan to put it in the center. You really don't need that much. Plus you got to remember we're going to be using resin over top of this. Firmly press it down and hold it for like 15 seconds or so. Alright, and that's 1 done. So then we'll just put that aside and let that dry for about 3 hours. But like I said, I'm just going to be doing it tomorrow, so put that to the side. Next one is this little candy corn. So that's the last pin backing attached. So we're just gonna let these all dry. We're in the final stages of making our clay pins and magnets. All that's left to do is coat them in resin. This is the one that I use. I've come to really like it actually. I also use a UV lamp. It's LED/UV, so whichever one you want to use. And this is the one that I'm using. Got it off of Amazon. It works pretty well. It's also how I do my nails, with a gel coating, and then I cure them with the lamp. And as I'm doing the clay pins, I'll actually use these corks that I've cut in half, and if you put them through it, it kind of acts like a little stand for you to hold and while you're putting the resin on, and then you can just slide them into the lamp, and it just makes it a lot easier too. So let's go ahead and get started with the resin. Almost forgot, don't forget to put on your mask. This will protect against all of the harmful vapors that this stuff will give off, plus it'll help with the smell too. Make sure to use in a ventilated area as well. So go ahead and pop this on. Now we are just going to attach the magnets to the backs of all these little guys using that same super glue again. And just make sure when you take them off, you kind of slide it and then peel it up. It just makes it a lot easier to take them off. Just gonna get a few ready and then we'll put them on.